I took a loan from the bank and I bought my first scooter. Before that, I was using a bicycle. A journey of ignorance, a journey of comparative poverty, but at the same time, a journey which was supported by family, supported by friends, and supported by the supreme power. First time when I joined the service, I was completely taken aback. No posting age less important. Whether you go to Mongolia or whether you go to France or US, every posting is important. You have to be supportive of your subordinates, of your juniors who are working with you. Then you are automatically a good leader. I am a happy person.
I am your host Gaurav Garg and we welcome all our viewers to our show Amazing Mentor. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have the privilege of sitting down with a distinguished diplomat and seasoned foreign service officer, Shri Gauri Shankar Gupta. With a career spanning over 4 decades, Mr. Gupta has served his country India with utmost dedication and distinction. His impressive journey has taken him to various corners of the globe, representing India's interests and fostering international relations. From his role as a High Commissioner of India to Trinidad and Tobago, Commonwealth of Dominica, Grenada and Montserrat, to his tenure as Ambassador of India to Hungary and Bosnia and Herzegovina, Mr. Gupta's experiences are both diverse and enriching. We are eager to dive into his insight and wisdom he has gained throughout his remarkable journey. It's a pleasure to welcome Mr. Gupta to our show, Amazing Mentor. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Gauravji. It has been a pleasure to be with you, and I'm sure it would be a very enriching conversation.
My pleasure, sir. Thank you for your precious time. So, could you share some memories from your childhood that you believe had a significant impact on shaping your character and career choices?
Let me tell you that I was born in a very small town called Ajitgarh. That time when I was a child, the population of that town was about 3 to 4,000 people. And it had a government high school up to 11th grade that time. So I studied in that school and I did not know anything about civil services, because coming entirely from the rural background and no relation in the bureaucracy anywhere, I had absolutely no idea. Since I came from a lower middle class family, I had 1 brother and 6 sisters. So I was more worried about the well-being of the family. So I thought, let me become strong and a properly earning member of the family, so that the family could be supported. So the only objective at that time in my life was to become self-sufficient so that I could support the family. But somehow the luck helped me, maybe the Almighty helped me, and I stood first in the secondary school examination in the board of Rajasthan, and I was awarded gold medal at that time. I could never imagine that state because it's a small town, a small government school, and since I got that gold medal, nobody believed me, including myself. And when the telegram came from Ajmer, then we thought maybe must be it is true, and then other things followed. Then we started believing it, and that gave me a lot of boost, because there was a time when I thought I may not be able to continue my study beyond 10th or 11th grade. But then I got the national scholarship and I continued, and I also topped the board of Rajasthan that time in the 11th grade, and then the University of Rajasthan in BCom, and then I did my Masters in Management and I topped that as well. So this is a record of sorts that all the 4 major examinations I was able to secure gold medal. And then slowly my confidence built up, and then I joined a private sector bank that time, which is now part of ICICI. And then I appeared for the civil service examination. I was selected for the Indian Economic Service first, but then I decided not to join, and then I appeared for the civil services again. That was in 1980 and 81. Normally when you appear in 80, the results come out in 81. So in 81 I was selected in my first attempt and I secured 45th rank all India, and my first preference was Indian Foreign Service, so I got my service. So this is my journey. I would say a journey of ignorance, a journey of comparative poverty, but at the same time, a journey which was supported by family, supported by friends, and supported by the supreme power. And that's how I could reach this stage in my life without knowing anything about bureaucracy or diplomacy at that stage.
So, what was the influential point which made you take your decision to join IFS?
I thought that the salary of an Indian Administrative Service officer was comparatively very low. And if you live a very honest life, I won't be able to support much to my family because I had 5 younger sisters and a younger brother. And I needed to support their education, their marriage, and also my father was indebted, so I needed to pay the debt and all that. So I was told that I will get some better allowances in the Indian Foreign Service. And that was the real motive that I joined the Indian Diplomatic Service. But in retrospect, I tell you that I did a very good decision. I do not regret it at all. In fact, I will suggest all my listeners that Indian Foreign Service is far better than the Indian Administrative Service. That is my assessment. Of course, everybody has right to judge and make their own decisions.
What about your schooling days or college days? Any mischief or notorious activity that you remember from your college days?
Let me tell you that, when we moved to Jaipur for my graduation, I got that 125 rupees per month national scholarship. And we had a small room in that time it was called Top Fatak. In that area, 2 of us were living together. We were cooking our own food. From there, the Commerce College was about, I think, 2 to 3 kilometers. So we used to walk in the morning and in the evening. There was no bicycle, nothing. So we walked to the college and came back and then cooked our food and then read whatever time was available. We studied in that time, so there was no time to mischief at all. The only thing which I remember is that when I joined the college, there was a system of ragging, and I was also ragged at that time. There were a group of 5-6 people. They started behaving in a very different fashion. They took me to a lonely place and asked me to do that and this, and I did that. So that was the only experience in college. And then during the emergency, 1975, the university stopped having elections. I happened to be highest scorer in the Commerce College. So they made me Secretary General of the college out of nowhere. Though I had no idea of the politics, I never contested any election in my life. But because of that situation, I was made and I did my work to the best of my ability. And I'm sure I did a good job. Otherwise, I don't have much experience of mischief. There was a professor called Professor R.G. Sareen, Ram Gopal Sareen. He was dean in the university at that time and he was keenly interested in management studies. So he set up a new management school in Rajasthan University that time called Poddar Institute of Management. And since I knew him from Commerce College, he told me that you have to try and get into the management course. Because most of my colleagues were going for chartered accountancy, almost 95% of them. And I also thought I'll also do chartered accountancy. But he told me that no, you won't do chartered accountancy, you will join and do management. So because of him, I appeared for the entrance exam of the institute. I cleared and then I joined MBA course, which I did in 2 years. In 1978. 76 I passed out from Commerce College. 78 I did my management. And in the same year, same month, July 78, I joined a private sector bank. As that time they used to be called them probationary officers. So I joined that bank and then I served there for 3 years. In that period, I got married because my father was very keen that I should get married now. So I got married and I appeared for civil services. I also did my company secretary's exam that time. I passed out that as well. So that was a period of very hectic activities. And then I bought my first scooter also that time when I was in the bank. I took a loan from the bank and I bought my first scooter. Before that, I was using a bicycle most of the time.
So post becoming an officer, how was your first day in the office and what all changes did you felt in your life?
You see, the first time when I joined the service, I was completely taken aback because most of the civil servants who joined with me in 1981, they came from very high social background. So the first problem I faced was that my spoken English was not great. I didn't know how to structure the sentences because I studied all my life in Hindi medium, except the MBA course. But there it was more of writing than speaking, limited way speaking. But then the first problem I faced was speaking in English. And sometimes people used to make fun of me because I couldn't structure the sentences properly. But then slowly I learned my way and then started improving. Then I also participated in some social activities in Mussoorie in the Lal Bahadur Shastri Academy. And then the groups were formed and then things moved very nicely. Slowly your character comes out and then people start accepting you the way you are. That is how the life was. But I tell you, yes, in the beginning I faced a little difficulty because my daily routine of life was rooted in rural India. I will talk about Chet Baisakh in terms of months. I will talk about Tithis. Now those people talk about dates and English months. So when you say Gyaras, so then they will say, oh, he's a traditional guy. So that was the time when they used to make fun of precious heritage. I tell you this very honestly. And I faced this many a time. When you keep a fast, then they will make fun of you. Oh, this guy is very traditional, not modern, not well educated. But things have changed now. Now people are accepting it. But that was the time when the westernized system of life was far more dominant in the civil services than it is today. Slowly, the people from rural areas have gone into the service in larger number and new norms have changed. So this is what has happened. But it was a fascinating journey in the training period. And then my first posting was Brussels, Belgium. And my language which I was to learn was French. So I learned French. First time I flew in an aircraft. So I went from Delhi to Frankfurt and then Frankfurt to Brussels. That was a unique experience in itself. And then slowly you got used to the system, attended classes. You saw a very different culture in Europe. That time the first screening of the film Gandhi in Belgium, soon after I reached there. I think it was within a week or so. And that time we saw how the Western culture was. It was a very different culture, very fascinating in a way, but also very different from our culture. And then slowly we got used to it. I already had a daughter by that time and I learned good French. Even today I speak very good French. In fact, when I lived in France later on, a large number of French people said that your French is as good as that of any French.
So what about challenges? What all challenges did you face in your first posting?
In my first posting, there were no major challenges as such because it was mainly the learning of language, which we attended the school, and then doing 3-4 hours in office. I did my routine work which was allocated to me. I did that work without any problem and the officers were very helpful, very cooperative. My seniors, my ambassador was Eric Gonsalves, who is a very nice person. He treated me like his son. So I had a great experience with him. So we had a great experience. My other colleagues were also very nice. Everybody came forward to help us whenever the need arises. So I think we had a very good atmosphere. Brussels is a very big mission. That time it was European Economic Community, EEC. Now it is European Union. It's also accredited to Belgium, Luxembourg and EEC that time. So it's a comparatively bigger mission and we had a very good team and they all supported me. So I have all the pleasant memories of that time.
So as a diplomat, you have represented India in various countries. Can you share a memorable experience or achievements from one of your early posting that had lasting impact on you?
There have been many wonderful incidents, positive, sometimes also leaving a bitter taste because in negotiations you end up having all kinds of experiences. But I picked up my diplomatic lesson because after Brussels I went to Dhaka. That was my second posting and that time President Irshad was the head there. And in fact in India, Rajiv Gandhi had just taken over after assassination of Mrs. Gandhi. It was 84. The first SAARC summit happened in Dhaka in 85. So that was a memorable posting because that gave me a lot of insight into diplomacy. I was first secretary political in Dhaka. So I worked a lot on establishing SAARC, where the secretariat will be set up, what will be the various conventions of SAARC, what would be the framework, how things will move. So the entire framework was, I won't say directly, but substantially negotiated by me during that young age, at early age in my diplomatic career. And on bilateral front also, we experienced many insight at that time. We had Inderjit Singh Chadda, who was my High Commissioner, a very nice person, short in stature, but he had a lot of jokes at his command, a lot of stories, and he used to tell stories on every occasion. So there were many wonderful stories I remember that time, and some were very pleasant, some were also somewhat not so pleasant. Like I remember intricate story of diplomacy. You see, there were differences between India and Bangladesh on the sharing of Ganges water and Tista water, these two rivers. So Mrs. Gandhi had cut off all the negotiations because she was very upset with some things that happened with Bangladesh. But when Rajiv Gandhi took over, Rajiv Gandhi and Irshad met in New York in the UNGA. And they, I don't know how it was drafted, but some statement was drafted, signed by the two, which says that the two sides agreed to negotiate the sharing of common river waters. The common river was added instead of Ganges and Tista. And now Bangladesh gave a list of 104 common rivers, so-called nalas and nadis and everything. Now it became a huge problem for us, how to bring it back to those two rivers. So this is one example I can give you. A small little mistake you do and then you suffer a lot. So it was a big effort to undo that mistake. And then finally, the negotiations were concentrated more on Ganges water and Tista water. Unfortunately, during my tenure there, we reached a very advanced stage in negotiations, but the agreement could not be signed, which was signed little later. Similarly, we had BSF BDR talks for our control of what you call borders, how to stop illegal immigration, smuggling and things like that. So I was actively participating in that as well. So there were many stories. I cannot share everything on an open platform, but there are very interesting, fascinating stories which I experienced. And I can share you one story that is not SAARC related, but is bilaterally India and Bangladesh. That was the time when we sent our troops to Sri Lanka, and ships were also monitoring our troops and movement, because you remember the problem which had and Rajiv Gandhi authorized that we can send our troops to Sri Lanka. So that was the time when maybe or may not be true, but one or two of our ships might have drifted into Bangladeshi territorial waters. It may be unintentional or it may not be true, we don't know. So sometimes we were summoned by the Foreign Office at midnight. High Commissioner Chadda and I, we used to go together because I used to take the notes and he was the High Commissioner. So he would call me at 11:30 in the night. Okay, let's go to the Foreign Office now. so we were summoned at midnight twice to Bangladesh Foreign Office. This is only a harassment. It was not anything else, but it was basically an harassment. The things could have happened next day morning. They wanted to make a point that they can do it. So these are one of the stories I can tell you. There are many stories.
So how did you approach building relationships and rapport with foreign counterparts during your early days as an IFS officer, and how has this evolved over your career time?
Gaurav, let me tell you one thing very honestly and clearly, that if you are honest and if you do things in good faith, then it's easy to make friends. If you are cunning, if you are smart, then you cannot make lasting friendship. So I made very good friends in my diplomatic career because I always believed in honesty and straightforwardness, and people trusted me. So I had absolutely no problem. I had very good friends in American embassies wherever I was. I had good friends in British embassy. I had good friends in European Union missions wherever they are, and also in the neighboring countries, including Pakistanis and Chinese and other embassies. I had good contacts and good missions, good friends. And in case of need, we did take their help once a while. I had no problem in making very good friends wherever I was.
So any funny incidents from your career professional journey?
There are many funny incidents. Let me share one incident with you. When I was ambassador to Mongolia, and that was my first posting as ambassador. I went there in 2003, May, June. Mongolia is a country which is landlocked between Russia and China. But it's a very big country. In terms of territory, it's half the size of India. It's 1.65 million square kilometers with a population of about 3 million people. It's a nomadic culture. At that time, most of the people used to live what they call gir. So they carry their animals and their home, shift every few days from one place to another in the pastures. They set up their a very fascinating life. But we had Kushak Bakula, a very famous monk from Ladakh, who was our ambassador before that in that land. Now he was worshipped like a demigod, but unfortunately he was not a diplomat who could take advantage of that situation. He was very popular, extremely popular. So when I was posted there, I used that goodwill and we set up fantastic relations with Mongolia. For the first time ever, our defense minister visited Mongolia. We agreed that we should have strategic relations. We started joint military exercises, which was called Nomadic Elephant. That was the name given, which continues till today. There were many other things. And Mongolians love India. They love because they consider India as a place of pilgrimage, because Buddhism originated in India and they are primarily a Buddhist country. There's a Ganga lake there. Centuries ago, some monk came to India and took some Ganges water and put in that lake. So it's called Ganga Lake. So if you carry Ganga water to Mongolia and give it to some people, they are grateful, eternally grateful to you. So that kind of goodwill existed. And I managed to buy the best building for our embassy there. It's better than the White House, I can assure you. We managed to get that building. We set up very good relations with that country. For the first time, we had multifarious relations with Mongolia, which was not the case earlier. So it is not really a funny situation, but I looked at things that this is a very strategically important country for India and we must build good relations. And Prime Minister never visited India. I met Dr. Manmohan Singh twice, requested him to visit. He said he will come, but he never visited Mongolia. Then finally, I think Prime Minister Modi in 2015 went to Mongolia first time. That the first ever visit by a Prime Minister of India to a country which calls us third neighbor, a country which actually considers India as a place of pilgrimage. So sometimes we neglect our relations with certain countries because these are very climatically harsh places. I tell you, when the first time I landed up there, it was around 12:30 in the afternoon. I remember the date was November 30th and the temperature the air hostess announced was minus 25. So I thought I should go back now. I can't really land there in minus 25. But when I went there, I found the people were very warm. The temperature was cold, but the people were very warm and very warm-hearted, and they supported all the efforts I did. So this is how diplomacy moves sometimes.
So what are some of the fundamental skills and qualities you believe are essential for successful career in the Indian Foreign Service, especially in the early years?
I'm also a writer. Subsequently, I became a writer, and to some extent, I can say that I have done some study on India's heritage and spirituality. So, my fundamental belief is that if you are a good human being, if you are truthful, if you are hardworking, if you are dedicated to what you are doing, nothing can stop you. You will be successful, without doubt. Those who try to be very cunning, sooner or later they fail, they are exposed. So that has been my lesson in life. I have followed that till today and I follow it now also, as of today. I did my PhD much later in Hungary after my retirement. I enrolled myself as a PhD student when I was still ambassador of India to Hungary, but then I couldn't follow it up. After retirement, I went back there for 2 years and did my studies. Out of that was on environmental degradation and ancient wisdom. A book came out of that. This is the book. It was published from United Kingdom, and this is basically on environmental issues. Then after coming back to India, I deliver a lot of talks in schools, colleges, institutions even now. And I realized that our students don't know much about heritage. You talk to them and you find that they don't know much. So I wrote a book called Glimpses of Indian Heritage. This is a book which was published 2 years ago. It gives you an idea about what are the Vedas and what is the health sciences of India, what is the yoga, and you take the language Sanskrit, how it is the mother tongue tongue of so many, more than 460 languages around the world. What is the astronomical contribution of India? What is the mathematical contribution of India? And what is the architectural contribution of India? What was the greatest universities starting from Takshila and Nalanda and others? So all that, when you talk about the greatest universities, people talk about Oxford and Cambridge and all that, but the greatest university was of course Takshila and Nalanda any time in the past history. If you talk about the greatest architectural feat, they're all in India or in Egypt to some extent. If you go back to oldest health science books, they are all Charak Samhita or Susut Samhita. There's nothing older than that. Even on Kama Sutra, the oldest book written is only from India. But people don't know because we have become so much westernized now that we have forgotten our own contribution. The oldest books on mathematics is the Surya Siddhant, which was written almost 3000 years back. Some people say 5000 years back in time, but definitely in BC. And those are writings which are phenomenal. Included some of those texts here. Those people who wrote Surya Siddhant, they calculated the distance between sun and all the planets more than 3000 years back in time. And what is the rotation time around the sun? All were given in fantastic way. They are in fact more precise than the modern science of today I'm talking about. I have some of these comparative tables in my book. So I wrote these kind of things because I was inspired that our new generations, even parents, teachers, students don't know about it. Then I wrote one more book which is a comparative study of Vedanta and modern science. This book has been published in 9 languages around the world. The last edition was Bhasa Indonesia. Before that it was Spanish. It was in many languages it has been published, and all done by either universities or by publishers on their own, considering it. And it gives how scientific and how precise our writings are, particularly Upanishads and Vedic writings. They are phenomenal. So that has become my interest, and I feel that if you are a genuine person, if you are honest to your own self to begin with, वो अंदर की और बाहर की शुद्धि, that is what they talk about. तो बाहर की शुद्धि तो हम बहुत बार कर लेते हैं, अच्छा ड्रेस भी पहन लेते हैं, घर भी अच्छा कर लेते हैं, गाड़ी भी अच्छी ले लेते हैं, लेकिन अंदर की शुद्धि भी चाहिए. So that inner cleaning, that your mind is, you are doing the same thing which is consonance with your thinking and your mind. There is no conflict between what you are doing and what you are thinking. Then that purity comes in, and that is what is most important. And I think people understand that very quickly. If you are genuine, wherever I go, I have been very lucky. God has been very kind to me. People trust me, they believe me, and they give me all the support, they give me all the respect, and I feel very delighted.
So were there any specific mentors or senior diplomats who provide valuable guidance or mentorship during your early professional years as an IFS officer?
I won't say one single person, but to begin with, I will say my ambassador Eric Gonsalves. He was very kind, he and his wife both. And we had 2-3 other senior officers in Brussels at that time. All of them were very helpful. There was a person called Rajiv Bhatia, and then there is a person called Shukla. He was also very nice. All of them were very kind, and they helped me a lot. They were my teachers in that sense. In the beginning, you need some skills how to entertain at home, what kind of menu should be made, and how you table manners, and all those things have to be learned. So those are some of the skills. And how you negotiate on certain issues, what should be the negotiating technique, how you should work out. When I was Deputy Permanent Representative to UNESCO, I learned a lot about negotiating skills. That was a time when it was very fascinating. Mr. Muchkund Dubey, who recently passed away, he was a member of the board at that time. In fact, I was instrumental in his election as UNESCO's board member. And Kamal Sibbal, Kapil Sibbal's elder brother. But the two are two different personalities. He was our ambassador to France, and he was also a very good, I would say, teacher in the sense I learned a lot from him as well. So there have been many people in the journey of my diplomatic life who have been very kind and very good educator to me. Mr. Inderjit Singh Chadda in Dhaka, he was a great educator for me. He taught a lot to me how to negotiate. In fact, my posting in Dhaka was the most educative in terms of diplomacy.
So now in your early diplomatic assignments, how did you handle challenging diplomatic negotiation or conflicts, and what lesson did you learn from those experiences?
My first negotiating experience was in European Economic Community. During that period, agitation in Punjab was at very high peak for separate Sikh land. And that was the time when there were a lot of European MPs who were raising voices. There were some independent radio stations which have come up in Europe in support of those people. So at one stage, I traveled to European Parliament and talked to some of the members of the Parliament, met some of those people who were running these stations either from land or from sea. So that was my first experience in, I would say, deep diplomacy. And then when I was posted to Dhaka, it became very deep because the first SAARC summit was held in 85 and I came to Dhaka in 85. And that was the time when all the SAARC related treaties were under negotiation. And during that period, I learned a lot. Let me give you one example. There was a convention under negotiation that the SAARC countries should have free access, broad communication between themselves. Now, it is very simple to say, but actually it means that they will all use India for free. Indian roads were available for free. And for, say, Bangladesh wants to go to Pakistan, he will go through India. If Bhutan wants to go to Bangladesh or Bangladeshi to Bhutan, so everything was through India. So I said it is going to be a great security risk. We cannot have this kind of treaty. So I had to find some sort of method to see that these treaties don't move forward. And then I explained it to Delhi and they understood and they realized that this is the way it has to be done, because you cannot have a treaty which allows free access of Indian roads to all the SAARC countries where they can infiltrate and do whatever they want, because the thousands of kilometers of territory will be available to them for free and for days together. So that is how some of the tricks work.
So can you share any insight into the training and development program that IFS officer undergoes during the early years to prepare for diplomatic roles?
This training program has evolved over the years. When I was there, we first did 3 months in Lal Bahadur Shastri Academy, that is we call foundational course. And then we came to Delhi. In Delhi, there was no training institution for Indian Foreign Service officers, so we used to go to different places. We used to go to JNU for study of international relations. Then we used to go to Institute of Mass Communication for how to communicate and how to do, if you have to address a press conference or speak on TV, how do you do all that. So we used to go to different places to learn our job. But today we have an institute called Indian Foreign Service Institute, which is very close to JNU in Delhi and which is fully equipped with all the techniques which we need to learn. And once the foundation course is over, the IFS professionals go to that institute, stay there for about a year and then do all the courses. Then they are sent on district training. I was also sent on a district training for 3 months. I went to Anantapur in Andhra Pradesh, where I was appointed as assistant collector for 3 months. And that was the time when President was Sanjeeva Reddy. He used to come there and that was also a good learning for me, how to handle the protocol and VVIP visit and things like that. And Ramakant Reddy was that time was my collector there in Anantapur. So that was another way of training. Then we are also sent on village visit that time, 1 week. So I actually went to Faizabad, Ayodhya called today. So that was my village visit for training. So all these happened, and then used to be Bharat Darshan, where you sent to some places in India where you see the development, you meet the people, you see how the problems are there and how you project all those things in your diplomatic career further down. So that is, I suppose, the fundamentally that remains the program today also, except that there is a proper Foreign Service Training Institute in Delhi, which was not the case when I was probationer.
So how do you balance the demands of a diplomatic career with personal life during the early stage of your journey as an IFS officer?
It's not easy actually. You see, the biggest problem happens that you change country every 3 years. By the time your children go to school, they get used to it, they make some friends, and you are going to another country. Not only another country, the climate could be substantially different. You can go from a hot to cold country. You can go from Bangladesh to Mongolia, and the language could be very different. The cultural values could be very different. So all those things change, and that becomes little difficult for children to adjust. But I think you have to make an effort to get used to it. You have to explain your children and your spouse also that yes, this is the way the service is. But then you have to take it as a learning ground. It's an education. You learn about the history, culture, geography of different countries when you move around. So either you take it in a negative way that you are, running from one country to another and changing the language and geography and climate and clothing and everything, or you take it as an education that this has been a great opportunity given to me by Government of India. And I took it the second way. I took it as a great education and I learned wherever I went. And I told that to my children also, and I think they cherished it. They are very happy about that. And they also became enriched because of that journey.
So, looking back at your early days as an IFS officer, what advice would you give to aspiring diplomats who are just starting their career in foreign service?
Fundamentals never change. You may be flying in the air, you may be driving a beautiful big car, but you are still on the earth. You have to be on the earth. So if you are firmly standing on the earth, you can do everything properly. So you have to do a few things. One is that you have to build your character based on honesty, based on learning. In new country you go, you should read about the history, culture, traditions of that country. I always read 2, 3, 4 books about that place where I was posted to learn about the history, culture, civilization of that place so that you are not completely taken aback. That is the second thing. Thirdly, you have to make a proper list of important people in the country where you are at that level, because whatever level you are, you have to make good friends, good journalists, good members of parliament, and the institutions which matter. For example, you have educational institutions, human rights bodies, there may be some other think tanks which are operating in a country, the former members of parliament, retired bureaucrats, and the serving bureaucrats. So you have to make a list of important people who matter for India. There may be a list of 100, 200 people, and you try to meet them, cultivate them. They could be in business, they could be in art areas, they could be in education, they could be think tanks, they could be parliamentarians, they could be journalists. So in each area you have to make, that is what I did. I always made a list at my level and I try to cultivate. Similarly, with some important diplomats in other embassies, we always have some sort of weekly meeting of diplomats at different levels. Like first secretary, 10, 12 embassies, the first secretaries come and then exchange views. Because India is also an important country. So people want to know from Indian diplomat their perception. Similarly, we want to know their perception about the country where we are serving. So that helps the exchange of views. So that is very important. So you have to become part of that. These are some sort of bodies which function, a weekly lunch or weekly dinner or whatever happens. So that is very important also. Then you have to see which are the areas in bilateral field where you can make further progress, whether it is trade and economics, whether it is education, whether it is defense area, whether it is cultural area. So you have to explore those avenues where the progress has not taken place properly. So these are some of the things which you have to work in the beginning. Firstly, in the first few months, I always did that to study the current state of bilateral relations, the scope for further improvement, the people who matter in different fields of life, how to make friends with them, the diplomats of your level in different missions, and then of course your own colleagues in the mission with whom you are working, and then you work out your own strategy based on that. But you must read and understand the host country properly, how their government functions, how their parliament functions, how their decision making works, and that gives you a good idea. And then if you are honest and frank, I think things work out very well. I have no regrets of any nature anywhere. I think I did my job in a very professional way, and wherever I went, people still remember me. There are a lot of them on my Facebook, and now, because that time there were no social media, but there is now, and they still give me a lot of respect. So I think I did well, and I feel in my own heart that whatever, maybe I was not fully 100% successful, but whatever I did things with total devotion, total dedication and hard work.
So throughout your distinguished career, what achievements and accomplishments are you most proud of?
I am proud of that. I am very happy myself that I have no regrets of any nature. Whatever duty I was given, I did with full honesty and full dedication. In fact, in the Ministry of External Affairs, I was Joint Secretary Establishment. That time it was basically our head of administration of the ministry. It's a very important position, and particularly when I was there, it was very, very powerful position. And there also I had to deal with all the missions abroad, more than 150 missions, every section of the ministry, including the ministers. Like I dealt with Pranab Mukherjee, with Anand Sharma, with Mr. Krishna, Shashi Tharoor. So I dealt with them, and I dealt with all my secretaries, like Shankar Menon was foreign secretary for a while. And I feel that they were happy too, and I was happy too. So ultimately, the country and the ministry does not depend on one person's achievement. But I can say that in the SAARC, I played a very important role in making of the SAARC at that time, in negotiations, and certain things which I do not want to reveal on this interview, which was extremely important. So there are many things which happened. In UNESCO also I did a lot of negotiations, successful negotiations. In Mexico we did a lot of work to improve our relations with Mexico. In fact, that was a time when our business relations with Mexico started improving substantially. In Mongolia, I explained to you, I did a lot of work for our strategic dialogue and relations. So I'm very, very happy. Even in my last posting, where I was not very keen to go because my parents were very old and ill, but I was forced to go. I went to all the way to West Indies. But I did a good job. If you visit West Indies and ask about Gauri Shankar Gupta's performance, I'm sure you will get some reviews.
So during your tenure as an ambassador of India to Mongolia, were there any specific diplomatic agreements or initiatives that stand out as significant achievements in India-Mongolia relationship?
Yes, first time we started dialogue in the defense field. First visit of the defense minister. It never happened before that. Then we started joint military exercise, nomadic elephant. Then the collaboration in defense field started picking up a bit. So that was a very new initiative, which India was not very keen to do it because of all the time there was a feeling in the ministry that China will not like it. They will be unhappy on this. That was the feeling in the ministry. But then we overcame that feeling and started some dialogue with them. That was a very new dimension altogether.
So looking back at your diverse career, are there any specific lessons or insight gained from your achievement that you believe would be valuable for inspiring diplomats and young professionals entering the field of foreign service?
No posting is less important. Whether you go to Mongolia or whether you go to France or US, every posting is important. Even if you are posted to some African countries, you can make it a valuable posting and you can enrich our relations with those countries. So first of all, we should not take any posting as inferior. Every posting is important. There's a tendency in Delhi to think that these are, important postings and these are not so. But that is not true in my view. Secondly, wherever you are posted, you should explore the areas where we have not done enough work and how to improve our relations in those areas, whether those are economic, whether those are education related or culture related or strategic, defense related. We should promote those areas. And for promoting those areas, we have to develop appropriate contacts in all the fields, both in the local government as also in the Indian bureaucratic system and ministries. So both has to work together. Thirdly, when you give commitment to certain countries, it has been observed in the past that we are slow in fulfilling our commitment. For example, if you are constructing a hospital in a country, now you have to fulfill it in a qualitative way in time frame which is given. Very often our projects prolong and sometimes the quality is not up to the mark. So we must avoid that. Now I think in the recent years we have given much more importance to that. We are observing our deadlines and we are also observing our quality standards. That must be maintained. We should supervise that properly. Then you have to be truthful in reporting back home. Sometimes people do not report actual happenings. They try to under-report or over-report. I think we have to be very objective in reporting to Delhi, because based on those reports only, the Delhi will take a view what kind of relations we should have. If some government is behaving in an anti-India fashion in a very drastic way, then it has to be reported. Sometimes ambassadors feel, no, it will be a negative reflection on me. But that is not true. We have to be very truthful in our reporting, and so that the Delhi gets a correct picture. That is one of the very important tasks which ambassador has to do, or a diplomat outside India has to do. So these are some of the things which we should follow in our journey of diplomacy. And then of course, as I mentioned, whatever task you undertake, you have to be truthful, you have to be dedicated, you have to be honest, and do to the end. Don't leave it halfway. Either you don't take up an assignment. If you take it up, then do it in the best possible way. I believe don't leave half-hearted approach. Half-hearted approach is not good for anything. If you feel that you won't be able to do it, then don't take it up. But if you do take it up, then you should put in all your might to make it happen.
So can you discuss the challenges of managing administrative affairs and reforms while serving as the head of Ministry of Administration at Ministry of External Affairs of India?
It's a very big challenge because there are unions at every stage. If you want to reform systems, they block you. Let me give you a few examples. A very simple example. Like in establishment division, one of the tasks is also to acquire and distribute all the stationery items in the ministry. Now, stationery items are about 150 types, maybe even more, and they also include actually other items like refrigerators and air conditioners and other things. They also include there. So the procedure to procure them was one-to-one, and so is the case of maintenance. Like for example, a particular variety of paper is out, then you tender for that paper, and then 10 tenders will come, you approve one of them and you acquire that paper. Now I thought it was ridiculous to do that, because every day I would get 10 tenders. This particular thread is not available, this diplomatic bag is not available, this notepad is not available, these envelopes are not available. Every day you will have 10 tenders, and then the 10 files will move with 10 people asking for the tender. And what used to happen is that some of those people who knew the people at the lower level, they sit down in their rooms and will bring 5 different letterheads and give 5 quotations, and then the tender will move upwards. Now, I have no control on that. So I said, this is not going to work. So what I did was I standardized the stationery. I decided that this is the 150 items we use, and these should be the minimum standard of that stationery. And then whoever can supply that at least 50 items or 70 items at the lowest prices, we should give them that tender for 1 full year rather than every time. Now there was a big resistance on that, because first of all they say you cannot standardize the item. You cannot even standardize a pen. Now how do you evaluate the cost of a uni-ball pen and a small little pen which is for 1 rupee? So it became very difficult. So I had to go to CVC to take their approval. That how do you do that? It's not possible. The paper quality is also so different in every case. Everything is very different. Even pencil is so different. Even glasses are so different. Saucer and cup plates are so different. So you have to give some minimum standards. So then they agreed, and I then finally standardized it, and we asked for tenders, 75 or 50 tenders minimum for the prices. And then finally we signed a contract for 1 year for those 20, 30, 40 items. And then whenever you need arises, you call that company and they will supply you. Now that obviously went against the system of earlier system, because in the earlier system the people will come out with 5 different letterheads and then they manipulate the entire tender process. So that was not easy to enforce, but I did enforce it. I give you another example of maintenance. Now there must be, 1,000 air conditioners in the Ministry of External Affairs. There may be 200, 500 water coolers, I don't know. There may be 500 fax machines. There may be so many telephones, fixed line, Now earlier the system was that one particular item goes out of order, a note comes to your division that this has gone out of order. I said, this is terrible. At least every day I'll get 50 things which are out of order and 50 files will move. It was such a cumbersome process. and the payments to 50 different. The whole process was terrible. I used to get at least 500 files a day. You won't believe it. And I used to sit till 11 in the night in the beginning. So then I systematized this system that no, it has to be a proper annual contract for maintenance. So I said one contract for air conditioner, one contract for fax machines, one contract for telephones and all that. I had to put that in order. And then only one file per quarter will move for the payment of that contractor. Instead of 10 files moving every day, one file in a quarter. So you have to think how to make things systematic. But then you have to be very transparent and honest in your functioning. Otherwise, you are taken to the courts.
So, as an alternate member of UNESCO Executive Board in Paris, did you encounter any contentious issues or challenges related to international culture and educational cooperation, and how were they resolved or managed?
To tell you the truth about these multilateral bodies, the things keep moving and moving, and the final outcomes come very late in the day. Sometimes the files keep moving for 10 years, 15 years, and then the outcome comes. So one of the issue was about, say, the World Heritage Committee. They list these UNESCO heritage sites, and the Indian sites were very few. So we said, India has such a rich heritage, we must have more sites. So there was a big representation by us on that issue. We worked very hard. We presented a lot of proposals, and then things improved. When I remember, there were only about 15, 16 sites on the World Heritage list when I was there. And today there must be, I think, more than 40 sites. Slowly, because during my time, we put a few sites and many proposals moved. So you have to keep working on those things. Similarly, on the what you call oral heritage of humanity. Now, oral heritage was not an accepted mode at some stage, but then slowly that also was accepted. Like, for example, we have this musical traditions which are basically oral transmission. In Western world, they have everything documented. Even music is documented. But in our case, it is all oral transmission. So the oral transmission of various scriptures is also one of the traditions in India. So then similarly, slowly accepted this thing, and then this documentation of oral traditions of the country also became accepted. So this is how things moved. So these are some examples I can give you. There are many more, but some of these examples are easily available, and you can see how important they are for India.
So were there any cultural nuisance or communication style that had to be particularly mindful of when interacting with local officials and counterparts in your diplomatic postings?
Don't think I faced that kind of situation very much. I did not face that very. I don't remember anything awkward facing that. Normally, in the Western culture, the system is that you have to wear a suit and tie, and you have to. If you are going for a formal meeting, you have to be dressed properly. So I always did that. If you are inviting people at home, you have to have a proper menu. Though I was vegetarian, but we had a non-vegetarian food cook at home, serve according to the requirement of international guests. So all those things were taken care of. So I don't remember having faced any problem. In fact, my entertainments were very much liked by the people.
So can you share examples of cultural practices or traditions in the country you were posted to that influence the work environment or decision-making process?
The cultural practices in every country is very different. In Europe, for example, you cannot be very informal. You have to be formal. If you want to invite some person, you just can't say, let's have a cup of coffee together. You have to form an occasion to do it. Otherwise, it's not taken appropriately. So you make a region for it. You invent a region, or you find a region, or you use a particular occasion to make it happen. And then you invite people, have a proper gathering, and then discuss things. That is a very formal sort of thing. Now, if you are going for example, they have occasions when you have to wear a particular variety of dress. So you should be aware of that. You should wear that. If nothing is fit, then you can wear bandgala. That is the most appropriate, our Indian tradition, and it fits, it meets the requirement of many occasions when you find it's very difficult to meet their standards. Like they will ask you to come in black tie or something else, then you can wear a bandgala and go. So you have to be mindful of these cultural traits. Sometimes those people don't tell you openly what they feel, but they give you a hint, and you have to understand that hint properly, and you have to behave accordingly. Otherwise, they will feel that you are not intelligent enough. The hint should be taken that way. So all these things are important there. Even when you have a formal dinner, for example, how to do a toast, what kind of brief remarks you have to make, who will be your chief guest, who will make the remarks in return, and then the whole thing starts. So all those things, you learn in these tricks of the trade in the first few years, and then you manage that well. So I did not feel any awkwardness anywhere actually.
So, throughout your extensive career as an Indian Foreign Service officer, you must have received valuable advice from your mentors and colleagues. What's the most memorable piece of advice you have received, and how has it shaped your diplomatic journey?
I wouldn't say that I had a mentor in that sense, because I did not know anybody in bureaucracy when I joined the service. My first interaction with bureaucrats was only in Mussoorie, in Lal Bahadur Shastri Academy, and that was our colleagues. And then when I did my training, that time I came across some diplomats and some senior officers. So I don't think there was a mentor as such, but I kept picking up advice from everywhere, wherever I went. If there was a dean of the Foreign Service Institute, he gave some advice, I picked up his advice. If he went to JNU and some professors gave some suggestions, I picked those up. When I went to Brussels on my first posting, my colleagues gave me some suggestions and my ambassador gave me some suggestions. So I picked up all those. But I would not call any single person as my mentor. I think there were many mentors in that sense who helped me in learning the trade of diplomacy.
So, what advice would you offer to diplomats and international professionals on how to effectively navigate and embrace diverse work culture while maintaining professionalism and achieving diplomatic objectives?
First of all, you must learn about the country where you are going to serve. You should read about the history, culture, traditions of that place. Orient yourself so that you are not in awkward position in social and formal occasions. Secondly, you should inculcate people who matter in that country. You should identify 50, 100 individuals who actually matter and meet them, talk to them, understand them, invite them home, so that you can develop good rapport with them and you can call them at the time of need and they will come forward to help you. Thirdly, within your own institution, you should have good rapport with your colleagues. You should also identify the areas where work has not been done properly in the past and you have scope to improve that work, whatever field that is. So I think these are some of the things which then the negotiating skills you have to know how to negotiate, because negotiations proceed properly if you are truthful and honest. I think then people slowly know your habit and they help you or they come forward to support you. I had a lot of support, particularly when I did a lot of negotiations in UNESCO and also in SARC forum in Dhaka. I think everybody was very supportive because I was very truthful and honest in expressing my views. But you don't have to be rude and harsh. You put forward your point, but in a very polite and nice way, so that people understand your viewpoint, but they are not offended. There are many people, and I know many diplomats also, who can be very rash and very harsh in their comments, and then they end up offending people. Though they are making the same point which others would make, but then you have to find a very mild and very delicate way of putting things, which is not misunderstood by others.
How can your young people best prepare themselves for the challenges and opportunity in the field of foreign service and international affairs?
I think the young people who are aspiring, first of all, they must learn about international relations. They should read something about international relations. They should know about the United Nations. They should know about the international organizations which are operating. They should know about the World Trade Organization. They should understand how the bilateral visits and bilateral relations work, because these days you have a lot of exposure on the media, newspapers, but also electronic media, where a lot of things are properly shown, how things are happening. So if you observe those things properly, if you also read about some of the books written by former diplomats on different bilateral relations, I think that gives you a good grounding to prepare for career in diplomacy.
So, what message of encouragement and inspiration would you like to convey to younger generation as they embark on their journey to make positive impact on the world? It can be any field.
So first of all, India is an important country in the world. When I joined the service, we were not considered very high in that list. When our Prime Minister wants to visit or Minister wants to visit, they will take weeks and sometimes months to give a date for the visit. But today, India is very important. There's a queue for visiting India, and if Indian dignitary wants to visit, he will give easy access anytime. So it's very important. So we must understand that we have already a niche position for ourselves. We must use it properly. That is first thing. Secondly, we should understand all aspects of the situation. Like if you want to discuss something about, say, Ukrainian situation with a Ukrainian diplomat, now you have to understand all the perspectives, the Russian perspective, the Ukrainian perspective, the EU's perspective, the American perspective, the NATO's perspective, and all the aspects should be understood properly before you enter and talk. Never talk things without full understanding of the subject. Otherwise, you will make a fool of yourself, because others may not tell you, but they understand, and next time they will not listen to you. So be fully prepared on the subject. Consider all the viewpoints which you should, and then you speak out. Speak out in a very considered way. Listen to others very carefully. Sometimes people don't listen to others. We must listen to others carefully, and then we should speak out. So these are two very fundamental things. Plus, of course, our instructions from the Government of India, how we want to move forward, what are our basic guidelines in terms of relations with a particular country. So all those things we have to keep into mind. But basically, Delhi will not have any problem if you want to improve relations with any country around the world, wherever you are posted. We will encourage you to do so.
So now we'll start a rapid round. So coffee or tea?
Tea.
Mountains or beaches?
Both.
Favorite book?
Favorite book, Upanishads.
Favorite traveling destination?
Mongolia.
One word to describe your diplomatic style.
Truthfulness.
Best piece of advice received?
Listen carefully.
If you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be?
There are many, because I have met many historical figures in my career. So it would be proper to mention one name here.
Favorite mode of transportation, car, train or plane?
I think ground transportation, whether it is car or train, where you can understand the country's geography, history, culture properly. So if you can travel the country of your accreditation properly, you will educate yourself about that country.
Favorite cuisine?
Indian vegetarian food, to be more specific.
One place on your bucket list you haven't visited yet?
Japan.
Most memorable diplomatic event or ceremony?
Presentation of credentials in different countries. That's a very big, elaborate and formal exercise.
Morning routine essential?
Morning, you get up early, drink 2 glasses of water, go to the washroom, do yoga, and then take your shower. Remember the Supreme for a few minutes and then take your breakfast. I follow this routine for many years. It takes me approximately 1.5 to 2 hours in the morning before I get ready for my breakfast. Even today I do that.
Favorite movie?
Favorite movie, I would go back to film which I saw when I was very young. It's called Raja and Rang.
A country you would love to revisit?
I would love to revisit France.
Sunset or sunrise?
Both.
One word to describe your leadership style?
You have to be supportive of your subordinates, of your juniors who are working with you. Then you are automatically a good leader.
So at last, one line that defines you.
I am a happy person.
So as we conclude our insightful conversation with Shri Gauri Shankar Gupta, it becomes abundantly clear that his extensive experience and dedication have left us indelible mark on India's diplomatic endeavors. We thank Mr. Gupta for sharing his journey, his insight into international diplomacy, and the pivotal role he has played in fostering global relationships. We wish him continuous success and fruitful endeavors in the years to come. Thank you very much, sir, for your precious time and sharing your experience, challenges, and journey on our show Believe in Future. Thank you very much, sir, for your precious time.
Thank you so much, Gaurav, for inviting me. It was a very delightful conversation. I enjoyed it. Thank you. And thanks to all your audience.
My pleasure, sir.